What's going on? Hello. I don't know where I am. What is this place called? Something? Green Meadow Golf Club. Cool. They don't want to let me into golf. I've played golf once and it was terrible. Anyway, so my name is Dan. Anybody know who I am before I tell you guys? You know who I am? Oh, cool. There you go. Yeah, my man over here. Good. All right, cool. So my name is Dan. My online pseudonym or my online business name is TheAspieWorld, which is quite a really rubbish name, really, but it was something that I started by accident, and it cascaded into my career, which was, completely not thought out. So yeah, apologies for the name. So what I do and who I am an autistic man, a Welsh person. So hey, Will. I was diagnosed in 2013. I was 26 years old. And had gone my entire life just like struggling, like, pills, parents didn't know what to do. But, I'm living on Anglesey in the 80s and 90s, a crazy place to try and get any kind of diagnosis of anything. So it did take me that amount of time to get an official diagnosis. But I have a diagnosis of originally Asperger's syndrome, ADHD, OCD, dyslexia, a bunch of other complex issues. But it didn't really stop me doing anything that I wanted to do, which is really cool, which I'll talk about shortly. But I'm an international best-selling author. I've got a book out called Autism for Adults. You can pretty much get it anywhere that sells books, on Hay House publication and Penguin Random House. We did an audio version of it, which is really cool. So if you want to listen to me talk about my own story, that's kind of cool too. My YouTube channel, which is my main kind of outlet for creation of content, which is where I started, which I'll tell you about in a minute. It has won awards as well. So I think I'm nominated for 2 awards this year as well. Can't remember what they are. But I do have a bunch of other awards, but that's not important, right? The awards aren't important. I'm just telling you like who I am and what I do. I'm an international keynote speaker as well. So just got back from Canada, put on my first event there. That was kind of amazing. It's all about changing lives, making impact. We're not about making kind of money in this business, it's about making an impact, right? So we have to create impact because there's so much potential that people always leave on the table. Talk about leaving money on the table. People leave potential everywhere. So that's what I kind of do. Trying to 10x the lives of autistic individuals, but trying to also just light a spark in the world and in the community. So that's kind of what I do in a nutshell. But why do I do it? Is because, again, I went 26 years just literally fumbling about in the dark, like, like what is life? And then I was like, I finally get this diagnosis. I'm like, oh, okay. But I was like, well, I've gone 26 years just surviving, right? Now it's time to thrive. But I could also teach this information. Like, so I went from being a very, very kind of like unconfident kid to being quite a confident adult, travel around the world doing keynote speeches and writing books and all this kind of rubbish. And then I was like, okay, I can transpose this. I can actually help people, right? Because we want to make an impact. It's all about making an impact of life. And so I've got ADHD, which gives me an immense amount of like hyperactive energy. So I'm really sorry if I'm talking excessively fast. If anybody misses anything, just be like, Dan, what on earth did you just say? And I'm going to give you an example of my ADHD, right? So this is really funny. I'll start with a really funny story. So that's me. That's Dan. How's it going? All the AspieWorld. You can actually find me on any single social media platform available, literally all the obscure ones like Lemon 8 and stuff like that. You can get me on, if you just search the AspieWorld, so AspieWorld, so the AspieWorld, you can get me on any social media platform. I upload 180 plus pieces of content a day, which is blog posts, podcasts, videos, short form videos, long form videos, everything you can think of. So we're trying to make it accessible for everybody, right? So not everybody learns in the same way. So we have to be on every platform in every format. That's how you need to exist. Massive impact creates a huge amount of action. Okay, so here's a story about ADHD. So I wrote a book, right? And you're thinking, Dan, you just said you were dyslexic. And I'm like, I am, like super dyslexic, like really dyslexic. And my handwriting is terrible. It's like, it's worse than this. And you'd be like, well, how did you write a book? And it's a good question. I've actually written 2 books. The first book was easy because I had a ghostwriter, right? And it was all about theology, so nobody cares about that. So my second book was a book about autism called Autism for Adults. It was like a practical guide to living excellently on the autism spectrum. Great title. I didn't come up with it. The publisher did because they're weird. And this is how I wrote it. And I want to give you an example about it. And this is how like my mind works and how everything works before I get into all the other bits and pieces that I kind of published out and what I'm going to do, 3 misunderstood traits of autism. But this is really interesting. So autism and ADHD have a very interesting relationship, right? That causes kind of like, you want to do loads of things all the time, many different areas of your life, but you also really want to hyper-focus on one thing. So this causes a big conundrum. So I'm like, and also I'm dyslexic. So like, so a publisher comes to me and says, here's a bunch of money, write a book. And I was like, okay, cool. The money's not really important, but it was a big publisher. So I was like, okay, Hay House, huge book, right? Book publishing company. So I was like, cool, big book, be everywhere. Impact, again, trying to make impact in people's lives, trying to 10x. Yeah, so you get it. So then I was like, okay, cool. what do I need to do? They said, oh, we're going to give you 6 or 7 months to write this book. And we need the manuscript by November. And this is like, I don't know when this was. I mean, February or something. I was like, oh, okay, cool. So I was like, cool, I can do that, no problem. So I leave it. And I'm like, I can write a book. Of course I can. And then procrastination kicks in. ADHD kicks in. I'm like, I can write a book. Damn it, I need to write this book. So I sit down at my desk and I'm like, oh man, I just can't sit still. I can't sit still for 5 seconds. Like I'm constantly just doing something different all the time. But then I'm also like, I really need to focus on something. But I also can't sit still to write the book because I'm not really good at spelling. Damn it. So I'm like thinking, oh, I'm a huge failure. The book publisher's going to be like, there's no manuscript. There's a whole thing. So then I was like, come on, Dan, you got to think smarter, not harder, right? And I have this whole thing about problems. I was like, this is a problem that needs solving because it's not really a problem, right? It's just a potential towards a solution. Really good tip to remember. And those things, problems, we don't do problems. We have potentials towards solutions. So think about life in that way and you'll have a lot more kind of return and success. So I was like, okay, how's the solution going to work? And one of the things which is most interesting is the way autistic individuals learn, right? So we have in scholastic education or schooling, this is where the word school comes from, scholastic. So scholastics in academia, we have the absence of mass. You know what this means? This means that when people teach stuff, they say, here's a textbook of what an engine looks like. I'm going to teach you how to, plug this engine into a car. It's like, how? If you had the thing in front of you, this engine in front of you, you'd have a bigger chance of learning it because the appearance of mass would be in front of you, right? It's kind of like, how do you learn to do something if you haven't got hands-on experience? Crazy, isn't it? So the way the autistic brain works is that we're always accumulating mass, which is called, a lot of people would say, my son hoards rocks. He likes rocks. Every time I go to the beach, he collects rocks. He's autistic and there's a room full of rocks. It's hoarding. I think it's not hoarding. It's the abundance of mass within his learning environment, right? And this is how we learn. We surround ourselves with the things we enjoy because it's not just collecting something because they enjoy those things. They're learning about it. They're realizing the appearance of mass and they're going, oh yeah, I get it. Every bit of this rock is digestible into your brain. That's how we learn. So knowing this, it's called tactile feedback, right? When you have something in your hands, tactile feedback. I get it. It's a bottle and I can feel it and sense it. I understand it because it's there in 3D space. So now I was like, okay, this is how I learn things, okay? I was saying this earlier, the world population reads less than 1 book a year on average, right? Less than 1 book a year. I don't know how it's possible, but that's the statistical average, which is pretty diabolical, right? So I was like, I want an advantage on people. So I want to be able to 10x my ability to do stuff. I need to digest books by like 6 books a month, right? If I can do 6 books a month, I'm like way ahead of the game, right? So I was like, okay, let's do that. Then I was like, oh yeah, can't read for buggery. Damn it. So audiobooks exist, right? Cool. Audiobooks. Love it. Sitting down and listening to an audiobook is like, chapter 1. Oh man, I was just bored straight away. So I was like, okay, that's not going to happen. But then I was like, no, I really need to. This is how I learn. I learned to. So I did 2 things. I took the audio, the podcast, the thing, or the book, and I was like, I increased the speed of playback, right? You can do this on most technology. So I increased the speed of playback to ×2. So it was like, chapter 1. I was like, yeah, I get that. Because I'm like, that's my brain's going crazy, right? So I was like, cool, I can get it. But how do I digest that information? If I sat down and just, it wouldn't be very exciting. So I was like, I'm going to go for a run. So I'm going for a run. I'm listening to this audiobook. And what's happening is something quite magical. I'm getting tactile feedback from the feedback I'm getting from the floor hitting my feet and then my knees. And then I'm ingesting this. It's kind of like this experience. If I said to you like, hey buddy, how's it going? You'd be like, all right. But if I went, hey buddy, bang, how's it going? It punched you in the shoulder. You'd be like, wow, I'm all right. But I really felt that. You'd understand that I said hello. Because I'm giving you tactile feedback with audio stimulation, right? So when I'm running, I'm like, yeah, man, so I'm like listening to books and I'm like learning all this stuff. So then I was like, if I reverse this, maybe I could write my book this way. So there's me in like November running outside with my phone, like trying to write a book. And I'm like, it's not happening because I'm running. I'm trying to type and the wind's blowing everywhere. So then I was like, maybe I should talk to my phone because iPhones are amazing, right? Changed my life. iPhones, iPads, amazing. They have this voice dictation software. You can like speak to the phone and then the phone will just magically put words on the screen, which is great. And it's great because it's AI, so it kind of like spell checks for you as well. So I was like, okay. So if I go running, so I was going outside in the rain. So chapter 1, but then like the wind and the rain, I was like, that's not going to happen. So I came home feeling kind of defeated, but still, I'm like, I'm onto something. I'm solution-based problem solving here. Then I realized I have a treadmill in the house. So I'll just run on the treadmill every day for 8 days, for 1 hour a day. I wrote the book in 2 weeks. So I said to the publisher, I was like, I'll give you the manuscript in 2 weeks. I said, you haven't written a word. I said, give me 2 weeks. I said, okay. So I spent 8 days running a treadmill, talking to myself. It was great. And then I had the manuscript, sent it to the publisher, and they were like, what? And do you know what's really interesting? This is really funny. They said to me, well, how did you research for the book? In the end, you know, the mechanism of actually writing a book was kind of bizarre, right? Running on a treadmill and talking to your phone. Yeah. But it was quite fun. But it was a good example of how to problem solve. But they were like, well, how did you research it? I said, well, I didn't research it. I know exactly what I'm going to say, right? Like, because they were thinking, oh, how do you balance, like, you know, computer on a treadmill? Because, and I have this big issue where people want to interview me for magazines and television and podcasts and stuff. They say, we're going to send you a list of questions, Dan. And I'm like, please don't send me the questions. I said, why? I said, well, if I can't answer the question, why are you interviewing me in the first place? If I need to prepare what I'm going to say, like, what is that about? Like, no, that's BS. Like, if you want me to answer a question, ask me the question I know the answer to, because that's the reason you're asking me to be here in the first place. Same with the book. Like, my friend was like, I'm taking 2 years to research a book. I was like, well, why are you writing it? You obviously don't know what you're talking about. You know what I mean? It's like, it's really bizarre. Like, the notion doesn't, so I could write a book a week. Like, I literally could now, because I've got the treadmill. So it was great. And so that's how I did it. So there's an example of how I used ADHD and I like 10x'd it to write the book, and that's how I did it. And especially looking at an obstacle like dyslexia, like, how am I supposed to do this? You know, like, how do I overcome it by creating problem-based solutions. But you go, okay, we don't really have problems, we have solutions. We're going to figure it out and move towards that, which is good. And also, a really good tip, and I was talking to my friends about this earlier, that like, you always know you're moving in the right direction and towards a goal, right? You're urging yourself towards a goal when you're coming across new problems. And it comes from an old kind of like philosophical idea of if you stood still, you're not going to get any problems, right? But you stood still, so you're not really going anywhere. So if you're moving in the right direction, you're going to cross new problems all the time, kind of like me and my quest to figure out how on earth I was supposed to write this book in, I don't know, 8 months, which I did it in 2 weeks. So that's how I did it. All right, on to the talk. That was just a preface. That was just me, so I know ADHD. So there you go. I love it. Love it. Oh, what am I doing here? Okay, so I'm really professional and I don't have a presentation. And there's another thing as well. A lot of people say, like, send me your slides. And I do talks all over the world. I'm going to Los Angeles June 26th, so in a month's time, going to Los Angeles to do an event called VidCon. VidCon's a big online social media event, right? And I'm doing a panel talk there about Autism Neurodiversity. And they always say, like, give us the presentation slides before you come over. And I'm like, I don't have any. Like, why would I want presentation slides? Like, there's nothing more boring than a guy being like, okay, graph A, graph B, and like everything they're saying is on the slide. I'm like, dude, I don't want the eyes on that. I want eyes on me because I'm going to be able to tell you exactly what I want you to know. Like, it's so boring. Anyway, so in my very professional manner, I've wrote everything on my iPhone and I'm going to go through it right now. Even though this does say funded, no presentation, because it's a similar one I did earlier. So if you booked to come and see this today, this talk, first of all, sorry. Second of all, I'm joking. And second of all, you would have noticed that I prefaced it saying that the 3 most misunderstood autism traits or autistic traits, right? Which is really interesting because we have a disconnection between reality of what autism is and what people perceive it as, right? Which is really fun. Because most of the time, I'd say 90% of the 90% of the medical industry, non-autistic individuals. And that's fine, I understand, because it's all about helping, right? If we didn't have medical individuals diagnosing autistic people, we'd all still be sitting in the dark like I was all many years ago. So it's not about like bashing the fact that there's less autistic professionals, but it's just about the matter of fact, right? That we have less autistic professionals, so we have less true understanding of what it is. So we have kind of like a speculation of accumulation, right? Which is really fun. So I decided that I was looking at things from my viewpoint and putting them onto my channel, my YouTube channel, which then grew into a Facebook page, and now it's also an Instagram page and all the other places we exist on the internet. And it was all about information and trying to like make sure that what I was saying was relatable, but also like an insight, like a hidden insight. Sorry, very itchy beard. And so people always want to know, like, you know, what's inside the autistic brain? So this presentation or this talk, and we're talking about right now, is more to do with kind of like how people perceive what's going on and what actually is going on, right? And so the first one I want to talk about is emotional regulation. Funny, isn't it? People always say that, like, autistic individuals have no emotional regulation, which is almost correct, right? But they'll say there's no emotional regulation. And do you know what? The word emotion, right? Do you know where it comes from? So it's derived from something called energy in motion, right? Which is a really interesting concept. And if you think about, like, energy in motion, what does this mean? So autistic individuals, or any individual that exists, will have this experience of emotion. So we create emotions through energy in motion. So we'll feel a certain type of energy, and then we'll put that into motion, right? That's where we get this word. And what's funny about it is that people just know this stuff, right? It just happens like societally, and you'll be like, oh, I cry when I'm upset, or like I laugh, when something's funny, or I smile. Like honestly, I don't want to say what it is, but that thing like arresting something face when you're just like, I'm like disgusted at everything. And like I'll be sitting down watching TV, honestly, I'll be sitting like this. My girlfriend will be like, what are you so angry about? I'm like, nothing. What are you talking about? I'm like really happy. She's like, well, you got a disgusting look on your face. I'm like, oh yeah, it's just my face. So my face doesn't match up because I have no idea what I'm doing. Like my emotions that I'm putting through my face or on my body or what I'm saying don't really match up to what I'm thinking, right? Which is really fun, obviously. Makes things complex and confusing. So autism is this, right? It has this complexity where it doesn't match things up perfectly to societal standards of understanding what that is. And society goes like this. Like I said, they feel this energy and they put it into motion. And autistic individuals, they kind of look around and they have no idea. They didn't realize that this was a thing. So autistic individuals can learn things, right? We can learn to, be forced to make eye contact, or we can be forced to do other things like learn emotions, like laugh when you're happy, haha. But at the end of the day, it comes down to computation. Autistic individuals feel things way deeper, like way, way, way deeper. So it's kind of like you get this when they say, autistic individuals can't feel empathy. They don't know what it's like to be in your shoes. And you're like, well, that's not what it is. It's kind of like this. If an average person or a typical person will feel a certain way towards someone empathetically, because they'll be like, someone will explain a situation to them, why they're upset or why they're angry or happy or whatever. And they'll be like, yeah, I get that. Thanks for explaining it. Top dog. And then they get it. They have this kind of mutual understanding of why this person's upset and all this nonsense. When an autistic person will look at it and be like, what? You say something, but I don't feel it. I don't understand why you feel that way. And the only way you can get them to understand that is so you can say, it's kind of like, remember when you've done this and you felt that way? And they say, oh, okay, I get it. And so what this is a kind of a self kind of like discovery technique of where you go, well, a person can tell you how they feel, and you can really understand that because you instantly go, oh, yeah, I get how they feel because, I felt like that before. But an autistic person needs to really understand, what are you saying? Like, why you compute it down, right? You're saying that I'm giving this. Do I have something that relates to this? You need more time, right? And this comes down to another condition called alexithymia, where there's a delay in the understanding of how something kind of reaches the connective kind of conversation flow, right? When I don't know if you've had this experience, but you talk to an autistic person about something very, very serious. Like, I argue with my girlfriend all the time. And, arguing about stuff. I'm like, wait. She's like, what? How much money did Home Alone 2 make? She's like, what's that going to do with anything? I'm like, oh, sorry. Carry on. And then about a week later, I'm like, oh, man, she's right. Yeah, I did make a mistake there. Oh, man. And so it takes a longer time to process because autism in its kind of, in its real basic form is a communication issue, right? It's a communication issue, and communication comes in all formats and all forms all over the place. It's not just like, verbal communication. I get it all the time. Like someone says something like, oh, why'd you do that? It's like, sorry, man, I'm on the spectrum. I just get you. What? You can talk. You're autistic. It's like, oh my God. It's like that kind of like, it's annoying. Anyway, so people just do think that like it's a communication issue that you either speak or you don't. That's not what it is. So autistic individuals feel things a lot deeper. It's kind of like more of a like a hypersensitivity. So autistic individuals have sensory processing disorder, right, or SPD, which is something that comes comorbidly, co-occurring, comes along with autism, which is really fun, obviously, because complex issues. Just chuck some more in there, just stir it around a bit, and so you have all these hyper or hypo sensitivities, which is really interesting. So when an autistic person feels something, they have a hypersensitivity to feel that thing. So if something terrible happens or something shocking happens, the autistic individual will feel that, like a bullet to the heart, but they can't process information for quite a long time. So whereas other people will hear something tragic, like, cat's died, autistic person will be like, oh, they'll feel that. They don't know how to move that into motion, right? They'll feel that energy, can't move it into motion because they haven't got to that part yet, because alexithymia is slowing down the ability to kind of really compute down what's going on. And so when you break it down, because it all comes down to logic, we're all computing things all the time, but typically people just take things at face value. People say like, cat's died, oh, terrible, tragically. Anyway, right, Coronation Street, boop. And they'll just carry on with their life. But autistic person will think about it quite obsessively, right? And you'll know this, like you might know an autistic person, you'll say something to them, and then a couple of weeks later, they'll ask you a question about the thing you were talking about like weeks and weeks ago. You're like, what are you talking about? Like I find myself doing this all the time. Like I like comedy and comedy shows and stuff. And Like I'll watch something and I'll sit there on my, my resting face. Yeah, this is really funny. I'm really enjoying it. Really, really angry concentration face, like. And then about a week later, I'll just be like, making dinner. Like, yeah, it's just right. Because it's taken that amount of time for me to really get what, because I'm still computing it. It's like, there's another condition that comes along with autism. Again, lovely, just loads of conditions altogether. Lovely big pot of stuff called echolalia. And echolalia is just like repetitive. It comes from a repetitive state of saying something. So you'll see autistic individuals, especially young people, say something like, hey, how's it going, buddy? Hey, how's it going, buddy? Like, okay, well, that's not what I'm saying. Okay, well, that's not what I'm saying. It's like, they're not copying, they're not repeating. What they're doing is they're echoing what they're hearing, right? To try and have a level of understanding. So an autistic person with, kind of a higher support need will experience echolalia in those ways where they'll hear a word and they'll just repeat it straight away. Or they'll just hear a word and they'll just repeat it the whole time. It'll be like, it could be any word, right? Like paper, like paper. And you see a kid walking around saying paper for weeks on end. You're like, what on earth is going on? But that's what they're doing. They're just learning that word. They're trying to, it's like an earworm. Do you know what that term is? When you hear a song in your head, you're like, oh, what is that song? And it's just playing in your head over and over and over again. And so autistic individuals will have echolalia with loads of things. And so when they hear information, like I said, like they'll hear a joke, the joke becomes an echolalia echo in their head for ages and ages and ages. And then you're like, oh. And then about 3 weeks later, once you've computed that down and really get what you were saying, you're like, oh, you get the joke. So that's where it takes a longer time, because we're repeating it until we understand it. Because you got to think about this. An autistic brain isn't just the brain just sitting there waiting to receive data. It's like this crazy circus of flashing lights and everything else. Because the entire world is a chaotic mess. That's exactly what it is. I actually run a program called Chaos to Confidence, where I'm trying to understand, understanding the chaos of reality and then allowing it to kind of become more substantial, so you can become more confident. Because that's essentially what autistic people lack, is confidence in every part of their life. And if you can get confident in one part of your life, being like the sun, it's amazing stuff. And so when you've got a brain that's completely chaotic, there's light, there's sounds, there's somebody, it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming. It takes a long time to position yourself in reality and say, okay, this is cool. I can deal with this right now. But there's certain situations where it becomes more intense, yada yada. So you got to think, all this stuff is going on. You've got echolalia going on. You're trying to listen to somebody, and someone tells you, why are you crying? Your grandfather's just died. And you're like, what? Where? And you're trying to process all this information. You can't put the energy into motion because you haven't got there yet, because echolalia has been like, hey, grandfather's died, dying, grandfather. And you're trying to relate this to everything in your mind, everything you're possibly, and then you've got all this stuff going as well, but then you've got bright lights, you've got somebody stood in front of you, there's the heat from the room, your clothes are itching, your seams in your socks are annoying you, you feel everything so intensely. So when they say autistic individuals can't emotionally regulate, they're kind of right, but they're only right because they can't emotionally regulate at that moment in time, because everything else is bombarding them. It's just like it's a whole chaos of everything going on. And so it's really interesting. I'm just making sure I'm going through my notes here in case I missed anything out, because I like to talk, by the way. I'm sorry, again. I'm going to, afterwards, I think I'm going to take some questions. I think that's what we agreed, yeah. So we're going to go for a break and we'll come back to take some questions, Q&As, which is really cool because we get to deep dive into some specific things that people may ask. Cool. So on to the next one. So that was, emotional regulation or emotional deregulation. So that's another thing. People will say emotional deregulation. One of the ways in which you can combat this is a takeaway. Is if you have an autistic person that you work with or you're autistic yourself, think about everything as an energy, right? So when you feel something, it's just energy. So you have a choice of how you want that energy to become a motion, right? Like what motion are you going to do into it? If you get angry, you're going to go punch somebody. Hopefully not. I'm not saying you should punch anyone. I'm just saying, giving you an example. And that's energy in motion, right? So that's how you do it. Nobody tells you this. Everyone just thinks you just know this stuff. Emotion. You just hear a word. It's just a word, emotion. All right, what does that mean? You emotionally can't regulate. What are you talking about, man? Give me something I can relate to. Give me something I understand, right? We need a deeper understanding of things because this is how we are. We're humans. And autistic individuals like computation, right? Everything's an algorithm. I have these two theories that I run by, right? And one is the caveman algorithm. My partner's always like, she's like, I'm going to buy, IKEA, can't stand it. She picks up this weird thing from IKEA. She's like, look at this thing. I'm like, all right. She's like, this is great on the shelf in a room full of other stuff that has no purpose of life. And I say to her, we usually and I say, she hates this. I say, okay, we're going to use the caveman algorithm. Would a caveman need to use this to survive? The answer is no, we don't need it in our life. Because there are so many things that society just accepts. We're going to have a shelf in our living room, taking up all this space full of stuff we don't use. How weird is that? And then the other thing was that This is, again, the reason I'm telling you these things is how the autism brain kind of works, right? It's really funny. I have this friend called Stephen Chan. He's a great guy. He's a Chinese guy. And I was in school with him, high school with him and everything. And we both did electronics together because I was really into electronics when I was a kid. I used to pull things apart, crazy stuff. My parents used to drive me crazy. And before we became homeless, which is all in my book, by the way, if you want to read all that. But when I was 11 years old, I became homeless, and then, the stuff progressed. It's a really interesting story, actually. But moving past that, but before we became homeless, my parents used to just throw loads of electronic stuff at me all the time. I used to just make things, right? I was obsessed with making things electronic. So I had a 7-year-old kid kind of doing. I used to like CB radios, ham radios. I don't know if anyone remembers those. It's a very kind of archaic technology, but it was really, really good back in the day, especially in the early 90s. I loved CB radios and ham radios. All that stuff was great. International communication, awesome. Anyway, so the reason I'm telling you this is Stephen Chan. So I did electronics with a guy called Stephen Chan, and something amazing happened, right? And this is talking about computations, okay? This is how autistic brains work versus neurotypical. So Stephen Chan's a neurotypical guy, Chinese guy, thought you knew everything about electronics. And as me, as an autistic kid, just struggling to get through school enough so I can get out, go home and take a shower and breathe a little bit. And then in electronics, something amazing happened. We had this assignment for GCSE, right? And so they were like, okay, you need to make something. This is your final project. You've got to make something that works. I was like, okay, I can do that. You have to make something from scratch. You have to design it, build it, test it, have to work. Cool. So I'm like, all right, what am I going to do? Oh, no, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a light that comes on when it's dark. There you go. Light-sensitive diode, light-emitting diode, battery, done. Easy peasy, really simple circuit. Absolute piece of cake. So I did it, mapped it all out. I look over and Stephen Chan's like, I'm going to make a PC motherboard and, does all these things. I'm like, dude, that's way too complex. He's like, no, man, it's good. So he's sitting there dipping all this stuff into acid, and he's doing all these things, testing all this stuff, and it looks really, really impressive. I mean, if he pulled it off, it would be amazing. And then I'm like, me and my little tiny little light-emitting diode, he's like, this is this massive thing, and it comes to the day we test the products, and he's like, Daniel Jones. I'm like, yeah, what's yours? I'm like, well, it's a light that comes on when it's dark. Everyone's like, pfft. I'm like, yeah, cool, works. Beep. It works, great, passed, awesome. Stephen Chan runs in with this thing. Stephen, does it work? No. He couldn't even finish it. It was too complicated. It was too complex. He'd bitten off more than he could chew because he's an idiot. So I have this thing called the Stephen Chan complex. When something is overcomplicated, we know it as too many cooks spoil the broth, right? He overcomplicated something that was very, very simple. All they'd asked for is make me something that works. He could have even made a light that comes on when you plug a battery into it, but he didn't. He was an idiot. He's a lovely guy, though. But so I always say, this is how I work. This is how my brain works. I say, we look at the caveman algorithm, we go to the Stephen Chan scenario. We don't want to be any of those in life. And that's how an autistic brain works, because I'm trying to make sure that I complete the task that I'm trying to do with the best way possible. Stephen Chan didn't have to do this thing. It was just amazing. Anyway, so I just thought I'd enlighten you to those. So next thing I'm going to talk about. Sorry about these small story prefaces. I got so many stories. Honestly, I've lived a bazillion lifetimes. It's amazing. Zoning out. This is really interesting. Just swapping hands. So zoning out. You know what I mean? When I say zoning out or autistic zoning out, do you know what I mean? Yeah, can I get a show of hands? Autistic zoning out. Yeah, you know what I mean? It's okay. Good. Okay. Well, you're wrong. So people basically say that they go, oh, my kid zones out. You see him? He's like, what are you doing? And this is an actual thing that happened. I remember sitting down. It was about a year ago. I was sitting down. I guess, and we were sitting down watching TV, and my girlfriend was sitting on the other side of the sofa. I'm like this. And then all of a sudden, I hear Dad! I'm like, whoa, what's all the shouting about? She's like, I've been asking you to look at me, and I'm calling your name for at least 25 minutes. I'm like, oh, what? And she said, what are you doing? I was like, oh, I'm thinking about something. She said, what are you thinking about? I was like, I'm thinking about making a lens out of the Earth's atmosphere. She's like, what are you talking about? I was like, yeah, it's the science stuff. Perhaps this, by the way, guys, I'm a chemist, so I have a degree in chemistry, and I love science. I was really, really bored, so I just did a degree in chemistry. Best thing I ever did. And so I was thinking about this. They wanted to make there was a black hole happening, right, quite close to our galaxy, and there was an event horizon happening. They wanted to take a picture of it, but they needed this massive, how'd you take a picture of something so big, right? So we could use the refraction of light from the Earth, right? It's a cool idea. Anyways, I was thinking about that, and so she looked at me. She was like, you were just completely zoned out. I was like, no. I was zoned in. I was hyper-fixating on this idea or something, and I completely lost it. So when we're talking about zoning out, what is happening? So an autistic person zones out. It may appear that an autistic person is zoning out of reality, but that's not what is actually happening. What they're doing is highly super engaging with something that's within the realms of reality, but you're not sharing that same reality, which is similar to when, how do I explain? Okay, so I remember during the pandemic, I was doing some consultations with some doctors in the US. And what was her name? Dr. Ali. She owns a clinic in America. And she was like, oh, I have these students, right? And I was like, okay. And she goes, yeah, they come into my clinic every week, but now we have to do these sessions over Zoom because everything went on Zoom, didn't it? Or Teams or whatever. God, imagine that. Remember people doing nights out on Zoom? What was that about? Anyway, so nights in on Zoom, I don't know, family game night on Zoom. God, it was crazy. Well, my family don't care on me, so they didn't care. But anyway, people do. They did. Anyway, in the book, just move over that. So she said, I've got this big problem. I said, okay, what is it? She said, well, I have these kids that I see in my clinic, and we have a good time. We talk, and we do some therapy, and they get a lot out of it, but they're autistic. I said, okay. She said, but now everything's on Zoom. I said, okay, what's the problem? She said, we've tried speaking on Zoom with an autistic kid for longer than 2 seconds. I said, oh, yeah. Okay, I've got a solution for you, Ali. She said, what? I said, you're not sharing reality with these kids. She said, what are you on about? I said, well, do they play Minecraft? She's like, of course they do. And by the way, guys, I was just saying this to some of my friends on the way here, that when I did my degree in chemistry, the thing I did for my dissertation or my thesis was I built a teaching tool within Minecraft showing molecular symmetry and group theory, which is this like quite a complex thing to show how molecules rotate in 3D space, right? Which is a lot for people to kind of conceptualize. So I thought, oh, I'll build it in Minecraft. It'd be so cool. It was cool. Actually, Microsoft wanted to buy it off me. It was really interesting. I didn't sell it to them. But yeah, I still have it. But that's what I love Minecraft. It's great. Minecraft, awesome. So I was like, the kids play Minecraft. She said, of course they do. They're autistic. I was like, yeah, I know. That's why I asked. And then she said, what about it? I said, make a Minecraft account, set up a server, and ask the kids to play Minecraft with you on Minecraft and do the therapy session within Minecraft. She said, well, you know what? I said, well, in a therapeutic sense or in a clinical environment, this is called pairing, right? It's kind of like if people say to me like, oh, my kid won't clean his room, or you won't listen to me, and he's playing Xbox or whatever, and he's autistic. So I said, what'd you do? They go in the room, like, Sam, dinner's ready, get out. And they're like, whoa, the kid's just playing Xbox. They're never going to listen to that. Why? Because we're not sharing reality. If you don't share reality with people, you don't share the other two things, which is affinity and communication. I was explaining this earlier, but affinity and communication, affinity, a likeness for or an understanding with each other. Communication, which is moving particles from one area of space to another and reciprocating those, right? Well, you have to have all three of those present in order to make a full cycle of communication. There you go, some big words for you. And so this is what you do. You wouldn't just open the door and be like, Sam, dinner's ready, get out. Put the Xbox down, dinner. You go in there and you'd be like, hey, bud, what's going on? Pick up the Xbox, engage in that reality, share the reality. What happens? Something magical happens. You share that reality, you engage in that environment, and then there's an affinity there. They say, hey, they understand what I'm doing. I'm playing Xbox, they're playing Xbox with me, they get me. Now I'm going to communicate with them, hey, this is our last one. We're going to do one more round of whatever it is, Fortnite, whatever, Roblox. And then we're going to go do dinner. Okay, cool. And this goes into another process in autism where we're therapeutic autism, where they say the now and next cards, right? And I don't know if anyone has ever taught or worked with autistic people. They do this thing called now and next, where they say, we're doing this now, and then next we're going to do the other thing. So you engage in that reality with them right now, then you create the communication where you say, okay, well, next we're going to go somewhere else. So then I said to Ali, back to the American doctor, I said to her, let's do this session. She said, okay, I don't know how it's going to work, Dan. And I was like, no, just trust me, just try it. So now Ali comes back to me, my next session with her, because I do consulting. I consult with people, businesses and on governments and whatever, for this type of stuff. And so she comes back from the next session. I was like, Ali, how'd it go? Oh, went gangbusters. No way. Yeah, it was amazing. She said, the best session I've ever had with these kids. I said, why? And she said, they were talking to me about things that they never talked to me about in a session. Why is this? I said, well, it's really interesting, isn't it? Because they're zoning in to a particular reality, which is Minecraft, which is a few things. But most importantly, it's an area that they can control, right? Life seems, for an autistic individual, completely out of control. And when we have no control over anything, we lose all confidence to be able to operate and maneuver in that 3D space. So it's out of control. These lights are quite annoying, but it's out of my control. And then the temperature in here is out of my control. And then the fact that I have to be in a room with people is out of my control. I'm just giving you a scenario, hypothetical scenario. I'm not saying I don't want to be in the room with you. You guys are all lovely. I'm sure we'll get to know each other in a short while. And so an autistic person feels this overwhelming sense of, I have lost control out of everything. Imagine you're completely out of control of something. It's like being in a car, it's just spinning. Like you can't touch the wheel. It's just spinning around. You're like, ah! It's like that every single day. So when you're playing Minecraft, you can zone in and forget the rest of the world, and then create an environment which you can control. And when you do that, what happens? Dopamine. You become you, for a short spurt of time, like a tiny piece of time. You're genuinely you in that moment. So she was in their reality with them, sharing this, and she was building this affinity for them. They had mad respect, and the communication flow was perfect. Thus, the cycle of communication is complete. And she was like, wow, this is crazy. So she conducted all of her sessions with those kids in Minecraft for the duration of that whole period. And that is a really good example of, if you're thinking about people zoning out, when in actual fact they're zoning in. So what you've got to try to do is not kind of shock them into being like, snap out of it, you're zoning out again. Unless it's like an absence seizure. I mean, like, that's a medical thing, right? But I mean, like, just like zoning into something is completely fine. It's not zoning out, it's zoning in. And it's the level of, I tell you what really hurts autistic individuals is when you have something like zoning into something, when someone says like, you're zoning out again, and you just listen to me, Sam. Oh, sorry if anyone's called Sam in here, if I keep shouting your name, I'm sorry. But like, yeah, you're zoning out again, Sam. You need to listen to me, look at me in the eyes and stuff like that. There's a level of no validation there. There's no validation. You don't have any, what is somebody saying to you? You're like, oh, do you know what? I'm really tired, I just want to lay down. You'd be like, you lazy, what are you doing? Get up. You'd be like, well, wait, I've worked 17 hours. Like, I need to sit down, There's no validation there. You need somebody to be like, yeah, man, you put your feet up, man. Don't worry about it. Eat some chocolate, whatever. And you'd be cool about it because you'd have validation. So validating the existence of an autistic person's reality is going to pay off in dividends because they're going to be like, wow, you understand me. We are sharing a reality. Therefore, our affinity is increased and our communication will now flow, which is really important because communication is everything, right? We're trying to communicate. We're trying to find ways to communicate. And this is the way in which you can communicate the best. So I want to make sure I check my notes here. I'm not going off on a tangent, telling you any more stories about crazy stuff. Okay, so the appearance of zoning in can also happen with the autistic special interest, right? So again, there's no zoning out. We're going to call it zoning in from now on because like zoning out is quite a crude word, isn't it? Zoning out. Out what? what the world? Depression? I don't know. You know what I mean? Like everybody zones out of something, right? When was the last time somebody didn't do something to escape reality? Everyone drinks alcohol, watches TV, plays games, does sports, We all have some kind of vice that allows us escapism. And it's the same with an autistic individual. They're creating a dopamine flow from the things that they are zoning into. You know this, right? So autistic individuals, especially autistic ADHD individuals, or ADHD as a lot of people say now, which is a cool term, dopamine deficient, right? Which means that we're not getting that happy hormone from things because we're burning through it like crazy. Like the world's chaotic. So we're having to constantly keep ourselves afloat. So the dopamine's just like gone all the time. So that's why we're like, we're hyperactive. We're craving things like sugary food, sugary drinks, junk food, because those things are giving us instant dopamine hits, right? Which can become a problem when you're an adult, when those things turn into like alcohol, drugs, potential pornography, all kinds of stuff that you can get addicted to, gambling, I don't know. So dopamine chasing is what we're all after on the spectrum. So when you're zoning into something, when you're really zoning into something, you're really kind of like getting this dopamine hit all the time. And it's really funny because a lot of people will be like, again, the rock scenario. This is an actual example. Somebody said to me, like, my son collects rocks. I was like, okay, great. No, his room's a tip. I was like, yeah, but that to you it is, but to him, it's the reality he's created because you can control that environment, right? And this is another thing. People say like, oh, my autistic kid won't let me rearrange his room. Yeah, you ordered. Well, rearrange his room. Can't move this chair. It's your favorite pillow, favorite chair, favorite thing he sits on. The arm of the chair. And God forbid, if you change the chair in the room, the whole thing falls apart. Like, especially if you're an autistic family and you have a couch, and the couch is time for the couch to go because we need a new one. It's going to cause some issues, right? Why? Why is it causing issues? Because the reality is gone. They've created an environment they can control. Now they feel out of control. They feel lost. They feel their safe space has disappeared. Really interesting. So you have to be tactful in those ways, but also validating the autistic special interest, because the autistic special interest is going to give them mass amounts of dopamine, which is eventually actually going to pay off in dividends. Because I always call it, like, I have this like sandwich method that I teach a lot of parents. Like they say, oh, I'll take my kid to the store, and they hate it because, they're autistic and the grocery store's flipping horrible. And it is horrible. I don't like going to stores, oh my goodness. And so I say, okay, you need to sandwich it, man. You need to do something really dopamine, full and rich at the beginning, and then take them out to the store. Give them a little bit of pain, going to the store. And then when they come back, give them a dopamine-rich experience again. So it's like, play Minecraft for an hour, take them to the store, come back, play Minecraft again, right? So you're squashing this period of discomfort between two areas of mass amounts of dopamine, which is comfort, right? And then what will happen over a period of time is that, like, the experience of pain will reduce because they know that there's a good thing either side. So it's all about kind of like using those things like the dopamine and the special interest because of dopamine to kind of your advantage to kind of get the most out of reality, I guess. That's the best way to put it. Right, okay, so moving on to obsessive interests. This is really interesting. So, the hoarders example. Do you know what's funny? Like, when people say, like, yeah, my kid hoards rocks or whatever, and I'm like, okay. And they're like, why? Why do they hoard rocks? And I told you, the appearance of mass gives you something like a learning experience unlike anything you've ever experienced. And it's kind of like, it's like kind of going in blind and saying, like, putting a blindfold on you and saying, like, describe what's in front of you. You're like, well, I don't know. I can't see it. Autistic individuals are tactile response feedback heavy. So they need to experience something. They need to feel it. Like, it's haptics. It's like if you're interested in rocks, you see pictures of rocks and you learn about rocks and you understand the names of rocks, there's nothing like actually touching a rock and seeing it in your hand, right? And then you'd be like, I get it. Because there's something magical that happens when you touch something, when your body is receiving feedback from a physical touch, you're sharing a reality with something, right? You're sharing, like, I collected action figures for a very long time. And I did this because I used to see the action figures on, YouTube videos or whatever. And they just looked like they smelled really good. Really weird thing to say, right? But I love smells of things, right? I smell everything is weird. But it's a sensory thing, right? Because that's how I learned to kind of know people who, because I have like a face blindness as well, so I don't always recognize people a lot of the times. My family will walk past me in the street and I'll be like, okay. And they'll be like, you idiot. I'm like, oh, sorry, Dad. But anyway, so people, like, I can't recognize faces that well, but I do recognize smells, shoes, and voices. So that's one of the reasons why I like to smell things. So for a very long time, I was like, oh man, those toys look like they smell so good. So I'd order all these like toys. I'm in my 20s, by the way, I'm doing all this. I'm like, boop, 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 ordering all these toys. And then I ended up working for a toy company. It was called My Geek Box. We used to ship these, I actually helped found the company. We used to ship these like boxes out to people on a monthly basis, right? It was like a subscription service where you get like these cool things. Anyway, regardless, I digress. So I used to get like shipments of these little Funko Pop toy things, these little action figures, in my office every day. It was awesome. And I used to just smell them. It was so good. And they smelled like a vinyl plastic. It was horrible stuff, oily and stuff. It was great. But it was interesting. It was allowing me the experience that I needed to share that reality. I wanted to know, did they smell as good as they looked like they smelled? Yes, they did. So the kid with the rocks, does the rock satisfy them? What's the weight like? What is that like in his hand? And so it's not a question of trying to understand the autistic specialist of like, is the thing that they are collecting or the thing that they're obsessed with, is it dangerous? Well, not really, unless it's like drugs or something. But like, is it dangerous? Not really. What you're not trying to do is, you're not trying to understand where they're coming from, because that's never going to happen, because we all have different viewpoints of the world, right? So I'll be like, yeah, I love Fight Club. Like, I'm obsessed with Fight Club. Like, I love it. The movie, by the way, and the book. It's great. And the comic book as well. Great. I actually have Fight Club action figures. True story. So, I don't know where I'm going with this. Oh, yeah. So, but my partner doesn't like, she couldn't care less. I think she's seen it once. She fell asleep, actually. I was like, you got to see it, man. It's like my 18,000th time watching it. I'm like, boop. She fell asleep. I was like, okay, well. But she doesn't like it. She likes stuff like Love Island and all crazy, I don't know, what was it, Taylor Swift. Everyone's obsessed with Taylor Swift. She's obsessed with Taylor Swift. Tell me stuff about Taylor Swift. I don't care. And that's okay. I don't need to care, because I like Fight Club. And she doesn't need to like Fight Club because she likes Taylor Swift. But I just have to validate that it's okay for her to like Taylor Swift, right? I'm like, that's cool. You like Taylor Swift? That's cool. I got my own thing. I'll be over here with headphones on because she sucks. No, I'm joking. She doesn't. She's good. And that's okay. But same with autistic individuals, and when they're collecting things or when they're obsessing or obsessive interest, it's not about learning to understand that. Like, parents are always like, I want to know more about this special interest. You don't need to. You just need to validate that it's okay that they're into that, right? Unless it's something very, very destructive. But then again, that's a whole different conversation. But that's basically the bare principle of understanding kind of like autistic special interest, especially when you're collecting things, right? So, but like one of my special interests, this is really weird. One of my special interests is very morbid, but it's the September 11th attacks, 9/11 in America, right? A horrible tragedy, but a very big puzzle. Like, how did this even happen? Like, how does one, conduct such a thing? Like, it's crazy. And even so much, I went to Ground Zero in 2007, went to Ground Zero. It's crazy, right? Who the hell wants to go there? I do, because I was like, I'm obsessed. And even when I did my degree in chemistry, going all the way back to that, I analyzed the dust. I analyzed 10 samples of dust from Ground Zero, and to find out what was in the dust, which I won't get into because it's quite controversial. But we analyzed the dust, and I made a symposium thing, and I won first prize for this data that I'd created on it. It was really interesting. But it's allowing yourself to kind of be surrounded by the things that really give you dopamine. And it's the opposite of, or not the opposite, but it's different to the Mario Kondo kind of idea, right? You've always seen Mario Kondo where like, you touch something that brings you joy, you keep it. And if it doesn't, you throw it in the trash. But it's not that. It's not about surrounding yourself with things that bring you joy, you know? It's not, people are like, yeah, he loves Pokemon, so I have Pokemon posters all over the wall. It's not about that. It's not about that. It's about surrounding yourself with the things that are giving you dopamine to intellectually kind of communicate with you because they're sharing that kind of reality of those things. It's not about just because they like those things, it's because they really feel a part of it. They feel they have some urge towards it, right? Like everything is a puzzle in autism, right? So Pokemon is great. It's a great example because there's so many different Pokemon and it's a puzzle because you have to figure out which ones are what and all the names and all this kind of stuff. And I was obsessed with Pokemon when I was a kid. And it's kind of like that. It's like the 9/11 thing was a puzzle. Like, how the hell did this happen? Like, you know, the most protected airspace in America? Are you kidding me? Probably in the world, actually. You know, they fly a plane into it, apparently. It's like, oh, what? How'd that happen? I want to know. I'm thirsting for it. A friend of mine was obsessed with Marilyn Monroe. Wanted to know why does a woman so young die randomly, you know? Like, and he went to our house and everything. Crazy guy. But it was cool. He like collected all this stuff about Marilyn Monroe. But it wasn't about me trying to understand why. I just wanted to, that's cool. Marilyn Monroe's cool. That's good. When you validate it, what happens is they say, wow, I feel accepted. The biggest issue we have in society is that people don't accept autistic individuals. We're not accepted because we seem slightly odd, right? When I say, well, yeah, we're like, what are you interested in? Mass amounts of death, 9/11. Weird thing to think about, right? But it's not. It's just something different to think about, right? Like there's this like common joke about autistic females are obsessed with like serial killers and stuff. And they'll be like hanging out watching a serial killer documentary and go to bed, night, honey, boop, boop. But they won't watch like a horror movie. Horror movies is off limit. Real life serial killers is my jam. So that's a really interesting example of how the autism brain works. And I think, the last thing I was going to say is that the idea of allowing and validating an autistic individual to really kind of like bathe in that kind of a special interest is because it's going to give them a learning opportunity that can potentially lead to a career opportunity, right? Because a friend of mine, an autistic guy, Patrick, he's crazy. I love the guy. He's amazing. He's like allergic to metal. Like he can't touch metal. Like he owns, I don't know why, he owns a collection of swords, right? And he like brings them in like big towels. He's like, check this out. I'm like, okay. So I pick up his sword and it's in a towel. I'm like, why is it a towel? He's like, I can't touch it. My hand melts. I was like, oh, okay. Maybe don't collect swords, bro. Like, it's weird. Anyway, so he was like, I'm obsessed with gaming. Games, video games, right? Not like board games, like, you know, Snakes and Ladders. Like real like video games and all this stuff. Like, I'm not really into that as much. Like I was when I was a kid, like Mario and stuff like that. When I was a kid, like loved it. Like I actually was obsessed with gaming when I was a kid, but that turned to music, and I'm a multi-musician now, so I swapped it out. I realized very early, I was like, I'm obsessed with gaming, but like this is completely, at the time, you know, back in the 90s, like this is destructive for me, and it's like not doing anything, so I wanted to play music, so I just learned how to play loads of instruments. So all my time was then devoted to learning to play different instruments. And so my friend Patrick comes to me, he's like, I love gaming, obsessed with gaming. I was like, cool. It's a good thing you're obsessed with games because you can make a career out of this, because he knew more about games than probably anyone I ever knew, ever. And he knew how the games were made, how to create games, what things were missing from games. I was like, dude, this is crazy stuff. Like, he's obsessed. Like, again, he really dove into it. So I was like, okay, cool. And a friend of mine, a guy called Sean, he's a YouTuber as well, and he's called Jacksepticeye. That's his like YouTube name, right? He's like a big gaming YouTuber. The guy's like a millionaire because he sits on YouTube and plays games and talks about it. I was like, there you go, Patrick. So now Patrick actually works for a gaming company. He tests all these games. So something really cool happened. Patrick was able to like not only find a career where they were like, wow, this guy's super valuable because his special interest, he knows more about it than pretty much anybody in the world. He's like a world expert on games. But then he also was able to work with this company that he gets free games all the time. So he's constantly, it's like this big kind of circle of awesomeness. He's like, get free games, you know, special interest, awesome. And then he gets paid to do it. And then the company love him and then they give him more games. And it's the whole thing. It's great. So special interest could be something absolutely fantastic as long as you nurture it and allow it to happen. It could be the most obscure thing in the world, but they're going to have a world expert on it, and then they can write books on it, and they can do the most amazing things with it. Kind of like me and my poster on 9/11, right? I was in a science symposium, and they were like, wow, this is really interesting data, and it's going to help change how we view things, right? So it's like autistic special interest can just like 10x your experience of life and allow it to create. So a lot of parents say to me like, oh, my kid's obsessed with games. I was like, good. Allow them to be obsessed with games. Okay, screen time is up to you as a parent, but I'm just saying, like, it's not a bad thing. There's nothing you do is bad, unless it's like, you know, drugs or like killing people, you know, you'll be fine, you know, or like alcohol or something. But like, typically, autistic special interest is going to be awesome. Okay, guys, that is the end of my talk. I'm so sorry I talked for such a long time, but I think we're going to take a short break, right? And then we're going to come back and you can ask me any question you want. And even if you don't want to like put your hand up and ask me a question, just like hang around and or ask me to, and I'll speak to you one-on-one. That's absolutely fine. No problem. I can speak to every single person here. It's no problem. All right. There you go.